Hi, in this tutorial I'm going to talk about Sass, that is an extension for CSS. Sass is used to extend and organize and maintain our CSS for large projects that we develop with HTML and CSS. This tutorial will be mainly focusing on web designers who work with HTML and CSS. So what is Sass? Sass is basically developed in Ruby, and in order to use Sass in our web apps we need to install Ruby in our system. So to install Ruby, go to the Ruby website rubyinstaller.org/download and install the latest version of Ruby. And there is a package manager with Ruby automatically installed once you install Ruby, and that package manager called gem, Gem. And in order to check out if our Ruby and gem are installed or not after the installation in your system, I'm not going to do it because I have already installed it. Go to your CDM. All right, and I've already opened my WebStorm and it has a terminal. It is same as the CDM of Windows. So in order to check if Ruby is installed, just like write ruby-v, and you can see I have 2.2.4 version in my system. In order to check if gem is installed, then gem-v will show that 2.4.5.1 version installed with the Ruby in my system. Alright, and now with this package manager I can include any kind of package for the Ruby to work with. So with the help of gem I will install Sass in this project. So let's go and write gem install Sass. Alright, it's just like npm for node, and it will take some time, depends upon your internet speed. And it has installed. I have already installed in my system, but in some cases you might face this kind of warning that unable to pull data from HTTP Ruby gems. So if this error comes in your case, you can manually set the source to this website. So to do that, you can write gem source -a http rubygems.org/. Alright, press enter and it's asking me to set the insecure source and enter Y. Alright, it's showing me that I have already present in my cache. In your case it might not be present in your cache, so you need to do it if you see this error. So once you do it, you have set up the source, you have installed Sass in this project, and everything is done. Now what we need to do, we need to add a file called .scss. So how basically Sass works? Sass works with an extension called SCSS, and we can make any number of SCSS files, and we don't make changes to our actual CSS file. We make changes to our SCSS file and write our CSS over there with the Sass syntax, with the Sass formulas, functions, and that will automatically make changes to that CSS file. So what is the purpose of writing SCSS file? Our Sass functions will not work directly in CSS files, so we need to include our SCSS file for writing Sass file, and it needs to convert into CSS file before giving it to browser, because browser can't understand SCSS file. Alright, so this is how this thing works. So what I need to do is I need to create SCSS file and ask Sass that whenever I make changes to SCSS file, make change to our actual CSS file so that browser understand and read that actual CSS file. We make SCSS file only for our understanding, only to make our work easy, to maintain and organize our CSS code for us, for the team that we are working on. All right, so what I will do is I'm gonna create a file called style.scss. All right, and let's dismiss it. All right, so I've created SCSS file, and now let's come down, and I'm gonna ask Sass that whenever I make changes to SCSS file, make change to our actual CSS file. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna write Sass hyphen hyphen watch style.scss and make change to style.css. It's automatically gonna create the CSS file. So I'm gonna press enter. So you can see that it has started watch. Whenever we write our code for CSS, it should keep on watching it. Alright, we shouldn't stop it. So if I go up there, you can see that it has created style.css file, style.map.css file, and Sass cache file. Alright, so whenever I'm gonna make changes to SCSS file, it's gonna make changes to our style.css file. So let's keep it running, and I'm gonna create an HTML file index. Alright, and in this HTML file I'm gonna include that CSS file because it should actually include the actual CSS file. So link href style.css, type text, our CSS rel style sheet. Alright, so I've actually included that CSS file. Now let's go and write something inside style.css and see if I write anything inside it, it should bring that thing inside our style.css. Alright, now let's define a body and add a background for it just for checking it. So let's add a background color for the body. Alright, now let's go and run it. You can see that I have made changes in my style.scss. Alright, now let's go and check out style.css. It has brought up that change from that SCSS file into style.css file because browser only understand the actual syntax of CSS file. Alright, and later on we'll see that how the Sass files are helpful in organizing and maintain our styles code. Alright, now first I will talk about variables in Sass. In Sass we can define variables for writing different code, but first let me write something in my HTML. So I will define a div, give it an ID container, alright, and inside this div let me add a h1 heading and name it as UL heading. Alright, and Sass practice. Alright, and h3, let's name it list. Now I'm gonna create a list, unordered list, ul underscore list, apple. Let's copy it, paste it 3 more times. So I'm gonna write Samsung and HTC. Alright, so that's been written. Now let's go to the style.scss. Let's go body, and first what I will do is I'll show you how to define variables. For defining variables, we can write something like gray color and add a color for it. Alright, so what is the benefit of defining variables? Only this hexacode doesn't seems very meaningful, that what this defines, what is the color of it, the visual representation of it. We define the meaningful variable names and add the value inside it, and whenever we need that particular value, rather than using that value, we use that particular variable. And if we want to change any particular color in 100 places in our website, we don't need to go in each element and change that value. We only come here and change the value of that variable. So this can be very helpful and can be very easily save our time. Alright, so now I have defined a color. Let's add one more color. I will define a yellow color. So I will write DFCC21. So I've defined two colors. Now let's go to our body, and rather than adding red, I'm gonna write that variable, write variable gray color. Now let's check out if that gray color applied on the background or not, and the changes that I have added in my HTML. So let's go, and you can see that I have a background gray color, and I have some list and the heading that I added in my HTML. Now let's go and write some styles for our container. Alright, that is an ID. So container, let's change it in double quotes. I don't want it in single quotes. So inside the container, I just want to add some properties, 700 pixels, height 500 pixels, background, and where we need a color only at one place in the whole website that we are going to develop. We don't need to create a variable for that. Alright, we can also define a variable for adding a color to background, but I can directly write white right here. So I will write position, relative, margin 0, auto to bring it to center, and padding. For the padding, let's add a variable for that. So for the padding, I'll write and sign container padding. Alright, and it should be 20 pixels. Now let's add and see. So this is the padding that we have just added. Now let's go and check out if it works or not. So I think that should work. It's showing me an error, but let's go and check out. Let's reload it, and you can see that the changes have been applied. It has a padding, it has a white background, and it has a list and a black color. Alright, so we are going good while applying different variables. Alright, now I want to I just want to let you know that we can also define a variable and apply another variable into it. Alright, for example, let's say we want to add a style to this list. Alright, and I can define h3 color. Rather than adding a value of color, I can add another variable, gray color, that I defined above. Alright, so now let's go and write a style for it, h3 color, and it has a color of h3. Alright, now let's go, and you can see that color of list is grayed out. So I've applied a color of this variable into this variable and then used this variable right here in the color. And the last thing, let's add a style for the list. So its position is relative, text align center, its color again gray color, its font family is sans serif. Alright, so that's been done. Now let's go. So you can see that we have a heading, background is white, there is no background, and I have a color of gray and the style sans serif. This is the introduction for the variables. As I'll proceed further, I'll keep on adding few more variables and organize my Sass files. Alright, now next what I want to show you are the nested styles. So what are nested styles? Nested style means we want to inherit the style of any other attribute and apply that style into other attribute. Alright, so you can see that I have ul underscore list, and let's say I want to have an image inside it. It has a source, and let's leave it as it is, and let me write some styles in it. So list, font size 12, list style none, and color is yellow. Alright, now I can write a selector inside it and add a body of image element, and I can write border 5 pixels solid. Alright, so what it's doing is it's inheriting the properties of ul underscore list, these properties, and applying those properties inside image element as well, including its own properties. So I am fetching the color from the ul list and adding the color to the border. Alright, but let's go and add an image into it. But so I'm gonna write width, let's add 50 pixels, and height 50 pixels. Alright, so I have added an image inside this project. You should add an image right here, any image that you like, image.png. So let's add a source, image.png. Now what we want to this image to inherit the property of color and apply that property to the border. Now let's go and reload it. So you can see that I have this image and I didn't define the color of the border. It has inherited the color from the list color, alright, that I changed. So this is how we can inherit the property of the parent elements. Alright, so now next what I want to show you is we can minimize this file into different other Sass files. So I'm going to create some other Sass files. Let's define a file called variables .scss. Alright, and I'm gonna cut all these variables and define those variables inside this file. Alright, and I'm gonna create another file called base.scss, and I'm gonna cut all of these files and copy it inside it. Alright, but if we see right down inside our terminal, we have said that keep on detecting the changes inside style.scss, but we don't have. We can import those styles inside it. So in order to import those things, we first want to include those files which are independent. So variables are independent and base are dependent on the variables. So first I will write import variables. Alright, and the second thing I want to do is I want to import the base. Alright, so I think that should work now. Again, let's go and reload it. So you can see that it's working again. It's importing the variables, it's importing the base and applying those styles inside of style.css. You can see that it's also making changes to the style.css because browser only understands style.css. So this is how we can change and organize our code in different files. Alright, later on I'll define mixins, I will define extents, and I will create some more files and show you how to organize it more well. So now next thing that I want to show you are the mixins. Mixins are kind of functions that we define, and when we call those functions it defines some styles for that particular element, or we can send some parameters to that function and it define the styles based on those parameters. So first I'm gonna create a file called mixins and I'm gonna define mixins.scss. All right. So I'm going to define a mixin, and to define a mixin, I will write at mixin, and I will name the mixin border. All right, and it should receive border parameter and font family. All right, and in case I don't pass any value to the font family, its default value should be sans serif. This is how we define a default values. All right, so I will write border with a border and font family equals to dollar font family. All right, before writing code inside our base, all right, let's add this file into a style.scss. So I will write at import, I will write style, no, it is mixins. Okay, so I've imported variables, I've imported mixins, I've imported base. Now I've defined a mixin. Now let's go to our base file, and I'm gonna add the styles to the UL list. All right, so in order to use that mixin, I need to use include, and for calling that mixin, write the name of that mixin, which is border, and it's receiving two parameters. First one is the border, and the border has to be 5 pixels solid, and it should be gray color. All right, I'm using the variable, and the second parameter is the font family. So font family, again the sans serif. Obviously I have also defined the default value, which is the same. So now it's gonna call that mixin, and it's gonna define the border and font family for this UL list. Now let's go and reload it, so you can see that it has used that mixin and defined the border of the same values that I sent in the parameters. All right, and we can also define different other kinds of empty mixins, just we want to call it without parameters and define those things inside that element. All right, now the next thing that I want to show you is referring the parent selectors. How you can refer the parent selector to detect any kind of event, like click event, like a focus event, like hover event. So we can also do like this. Let's say what I want to do is when I hover my cursor on it, it should have a background of light gray. All right, how can I do it? I don't need to define this variable again, this element again. What I can do is I can use the character and dot, and I can define the name of that event. All right, that is hover. All right, and inside it I can define a background, and that is should be light gray. All right, so this is how I am selecting the parent element. In our case, this is this class. All right, now let's go and reload it. Now if I hover my cursor on it, uh, it's not occurring. So let me see. Oh, where is it? Actually, it's not dot, it is colon. All right, so now let's go and reload it, and if I hover my cursor on it, you can see that it is applying that event. We can apply as much event as we want inside the same element. So this is how we can organize things. There are different files. As you see, I have imported these files right here. It's up to you that how to organize your file. I can also divide this much code in different SCSS files, but for now I have not that much long SCSS code, so that's why I'm keeping all the code inside the same file. Alright, you can also divide that file inside the different folders, and then include those folders from the folder name slash and then file name. Alright, so next let's we have added and learned that how to select the parents. Now let's add a mixin and add select the parent from that mixin. Alright, so let's go and add another mixin, and I will write mixin and h border. I'm not gonna send any parameter to it. So I'm gonna select the parent. So I can write and colon active. Active means when I click on it, it should have a border. All right, that should be 5 pixels, dotted and black. All right, so we want to apply this style onto our UL underscore heading. So again, I will write include and I can call that mixin h underscore border. All right, and now let's go and reload it, and I have hover. I need to click on it. You can see that as I click on it, it is calling the mixin and it's applying that border onto the parent element that I just selected inside that mixin. All right, so we can define mixins, we can merge different things into each other. So you can see that how interesting and entertaining this thing is. All right, and how well we can organize our code. Now the last thing that I want to show you for this particular part of this tutorial are the extend keywords. But before that, let me go to HTML and define some more elements. So I'm going to define a div, and inside that div I'm going to define different buttons. So I'm going to add a class which is the button. I'm going to add two classes, button and button1. I'll show you that what does it mean. So I will enter, let's copy it and paste it 2 more times and change the class button2, button3 and the text as well. All right, now let's go to our base and let's define the style for button. Width equals to 60 pixels and height has to be 20 pixels. All right, now let's define the style for button 1 and let's add the background for it. So I will define red. All right, let's copy it and paste it. I'm using variable that I haven't added yet inside my variables. I'm just going to add that. First change the name to button2 and button3 and its color should be green, its color should be blue. All right, now let's go to our variables and define these variables. So I will define red, it has to be red. All right, so I'll define green, and the last one is the blue, which is blue. All right, now let's come back to our base. Now let's go and reload it. So you can see that it has default width and height. I haven't added the width and height to these things, but what I want to do is I don't want to add this class. I don't want to add this class, but I want to define the similar kind of parameters, even similar kind of properties at one place, and then I want to extend those properties in these individual buttons. All right, so what I'll do, I will bracket and I will write at extend and I can write dot button. All right, right now I'm extending the properties of that button. All right, so I'm setting the common properties at one place and I'm extending those properties. All right, now let's reload it. It doesn't look any change inside it, but the thing that I'm trying to do, if I remove it from here and go and reload it, you can see that it's still applying those properties on those buttons because I have added the properties at one place, and after defining those properties I'm extending the properties of that class inside individual button1, button2 and button3 classes. So this is how you define common properties at one place and then extend those properties in other elements that needs those common properties. All right, so it's up to you how you organize properties in other elements. Now let's go and check out the style.css and see that how it's organizing different things. It has a button1 class, it's button2, button3, and it has common properties inside the button1, button2, and button3 classes. So this is how you can organize and use the Sass files to add the mixins, add partials, add extend methods, and select the parents. This was the first part of this tutorial. In the second part, I'm gonna write some code for the actual Sass to see that Sass is actually a programming language. I'm going to define if conditions, I'm going to define loops, and how to work with those ifs and loops inside our CSS files. So now let's talk about some comments. Let's say if I want to add a comment above this body element, and the usual way of adding comment is our base.scss file and end this with a star slash. Alright, and if I go to style.css, you can see that there is a comment. Alright, but if I add a comment with the double slashes, it will only be here in the SCSS file, but it will not be shown in the style.css. So whatever we want to uh, add inside our CSS file, we should add a comment with the usual traditional way. All right, and the things that we want to stick inside our SCSS file, and that should be done with our double slashes. All right, because we have different syntax in our SCSS files, so we should have comments that are only related to SCSS files. So that's been said. Now let's talk about our mathematical operations, or we can add different things, we can subtract things, multiply things. Let's say if I want to, we have a padding with C padding that refers to container padding, and if I go to variables, this is 20. All right, and I don't want to change the value right here. What I want to do is I want to apply this padding to all the elements same, that is 20, and change the value of it at one place. So I will add plus and I will add 20. Alright, so what it's gonna do, it's gonna bring the value of it and add the 20 inside it and then apply that padding around it. Alright, so now let's go, and if I reload it, you can see that the padding have been increased. Alright, and that was because I catch up the value from C padding and add up the 20 inside it. And now let's see some practical example. I'm gonna create a mixin inside it, and that mixin would take a value and apply the calculation on it and add a space for these buttons. What I want to do is I want to apply the same amount of space for each button, depends upon the number of button it has. All right, if it has 3 buttons, it should take the space 33% each. If it has 4 buttons, it should take the width of 25% each. All right, so now let's go and do it. I'm gonna create a mixin. All right, and I'm gonna name it image button width, and it's gonna take the number of buttons and it's gonna create the width of our container. So parent underscore width. All right, and inside it I'm gonna set the property width to parent width divided by num. All right, but we need to concatenate px with it, but first I need to round it because it will create a decimal point numbers. It will not work in CSS, so I need to call a round function, that is the Sass function. All right, and after that I need to multiply it with 1 pixel. I can't concatenate it with string because it width is not a string, it's a simple digit with a px with it, and I want to subtract 10 from individual button. All right, and now I'll go back to my base and I'll come back to this button and remove that width to 60, and here I will call include, and what was the name, button width, and I'm gonna send 3 because we have 3 buttons, and I'm gonna send the width of our container, which is 700. All right, now I'll go back right here and I'll reload it. You can see that it has divided the buttons for individual width because I subtracted 10 from an individual button, so it has added a space at the end of the last button. All right, so this is how we can add different mathematical operations on different variables and its values. Now let's talk about adding colors. If I go, I've opened this website, you can see there are a bunch of different functions that are available inside Sass. We can change the hue, saturation, lightness. We can add darken colors. We can add a grayscale effect. That is very difficult if you try to do with CSS. In Sass, these functions are available. Now let's go and try to add some functions on these buttons. All right, so now I'll go back to my base file and I'm gonna apply different effects over it. I'm gonna select the parent element with the and colon hover, and it should be and inside it I want to change the background by calling a function. I'm gonna use invert function right here. All right, and invert of green. All right, it's a red, so let's keep it red. Now for the green I want to add and hover background, and I want to call, let's say I want to change it to grayscale, so I can call a function grayscale and I want to send it a color, the same color that I have for this button. Now let's go and reload it, and if I hover it, you can see that this sky color is the invert color of that button. All right, if I hover here, you can see that it has converted to the grayscale. I haven't added any hover pseudo property on the blue button, so there is no change on that button. So I just wanted to show you that there are a bunch of functions available for Sass. If you want to use that, you can check it out and use any kinds of function from here. All right, and now let's go further. We have lists. As we have variables, we can also apply different lists with it. So let's add a list element just like array. So I want to apply a radius to the border of my UI list. So I will add a radius variable and I will add a list 10, 20 pixels, 30 pixels, 40 pixels, and we can add as much as we want. All right, so we have added 4 values in the list of variable radius. All right, we can add the string values, we can add integer values as well. So now let's go to base, and inside the base let's come right here and let's say I want to add a border radius. All right, and if I use this variable, it's gonna use these 4 values for top left corner, top right corner, bottom left corner, and do all this. But I want to stick to the one value and apply individual value for all the corners. So what I'll do is I'll use the nth function, which is the Sass function, and I'll call that variable radius, and here I'll specify that which value I want to use, which starts with 1, 2, 3. So I will use the first one, so I can enter 1. All right, And now let's go and reload it. Make sure you keep an eye on the radius. You can see that I have the radius of 10 around the border of these lists. All right, now if I go back and change it to 3, it's gonna apply the value of the third value, which is 30. All right, so now let's go and keep an eye on it. You can see that it has applied the third value of it. So this is how we can uh, define different list elements and apply different values on anything that we want. All right, so now I want to show you the generic arguments for the mixins and if condition, and then finally the loops. So you can see that I created the mixin button width and I send the two arguments. I'm gonna remove these two arguments and I'm gonna write args, and it can be any name, and I'm gonna add 3 dots after that name, and this args will receive all the parameters that will be sent to it. It can be 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, and we can get the individual value from it. Let's say we want to get the parent width. We know that the parent width is the second argument from the base that we sent. All right, here. All right, and this is the number of buttons. So now let's go to mixins, and I'm gonna write nth args and then write 2. This is the second argument, and I'm gonna copy it and paste it right here, and I'm gonna change it to 1. All right, and if I save it and go to my browser and reload it, you can see there is no change. All right, so we can also use it with the args argument. Now let's add an if condition. Let's say if if the second argument, if the first argument means the number of buttons are less than or equals to 1, then don't apply this calculation. So to do that, let's add if nth args 1 greater than 1, then apply this calculation to width. All right, else change the width to 100 pixels. All right, right now this condition will get true because we have the number of buttons greater than 1, but let's go and check it if it works fine or not. So I have reloaded it. You can see that it's working fine. Now let's send one argument right here. All right, if there is a one argument, then this else part should execute and the width of individual buttons should set to 100. Now let's go and reload it. I think I should change it to this is 1. Let's save it. All right, and let's go and reload it. It's not working. I think that I need to reload this page again. So I have reloaded it. You can see that the button width is set to 100. Sometimes it doesn't work by reloading it because I'm running two watches for the Sass. That's why it's creating some problems. So it's getting fine. All right. So you can add if conditions, else condition. We can also have else if, that we can also add right here. All right, so this is how you add if condition. Now let's talk about loops. Loops are very important if you want to iterate through individual items, but before that, let's go and create a list inside variables. So I'm gonna write list colors, and I'm going to use previous variables for creating the list. So that would be green, and the last one would be blue. All right, so I've created that list, and inside the list I have 3 values: red, green, and blue. All right, so now let's go to index file and create a div and give it a class of headings, and inside it let's create a h1. This is h1, and I'm gonna copy it and paste it right here. Change it to h2 and h3 and change its text as well. Now I'm gonna iterate through items individual items of my list, and I'm gonna apply individual colors based on if it is h1, h2, h3. Alright, when it comes inside headings tag. Alright, now let's go to base, and at the bottom what you need to do, you need to use a for loop, and to add a for loop there is a keyword called for with the @ for, and I'm gonna write item from 1 through up to which, up to list colors. Alright, so we'll iterate through individual list colors and each color will be added inside this item. Alright, and I'm gonna select that class now, headings, and inside this class I have individual heading tags h1, h2, h3. Alright, to select that I can write h and hash sign, and inside the curly braces I can write item. Alright, so it will have h1, h2, h3 as it iterate. Alright, now I'll apply the color on individual h item. So I'll select nth list underscore colors item. Alright, now h1 will have red color, h2 will have green color, h3 will have blue color. Now let's go and check out if it works. So you can see that h1 have red, green, blue. So this is how we iterate through individual items. We can also iterate through individual elements inside our HTML, but it's all up to your logic and your program, that what you want to test and what you want to apply your CSS. So this was all for this tutorial. I hope that you have liked it. I have tried to cover each and everything in this tutorial, but there are a bunch of other things that I showed you in the links, that there are a bunch of other functions, there are a bunch of other pseudo keywords that you can use to apply and modify your CSS with the help of Sass files. So make sure to subscribe my channel if you haven't yet, like this video and comment below if you have any question. Thanks for watching this video.